So what we're talking about today is adding, subtracting, and multiplying polynomials. These are kind of parts of two learning targets that we have for this chapter. Understanding how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. We won't be dividing today. And then we're also going to not use Pascals in today's notes. We will do separate notes to be able to expand things with Pascals, even though it's from this section. Okay? So one thing I want to make sure that you know is the difference between solving and simplifying. Simplifying means that you're going to distribute, if you can, distribute. Long day, can't spell. Distribute and combine like terms. Sometimes there's nothing to distribute, so then you would just combine like terms. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is adding. Something that's important for adding is when you're adding polynomials, your exponents stay the same. Okay? Now, I prefer the vertical method because it just helps you line things up and make sure that you include everything. And when I do things vertically, what happens is x's over x's, x squares over x squareds, and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to start this off by saying 3x squared plus 4x plus 3. Well, then I put the other x squared underneath that x squared, and I put this 5x underneath the 4x because like terms go together. And I'm adding. So 3 plus 1 is 4x squared. Remember that your exponents stay the same. 4 plus negative 5, or just 4 minus 5 is a negative 1x. And 3 plus nothing is 3. Okay. So again, I lined everything up, and then I was able to combine my like terms. I'd like you to try this one on the right, same idea. Line everything up, put it in order. And once you think you're ready, go ahead and push play. All right, so I have a negative x squared, because that's a negative. I have a positive 5x, and then I have a positive 8. But then it says I have an x to the third. Well, x to the third cannot go with x to the second, so I'm going to go ahead and put it over to the right some. And then I have a positive 4x squared, so I can put it under this x squared. And then I have a minus 7, so I can put it under my number. Well, now I'm just adding. So nothing plus 1 is just 1x cubed. And then a negative 1 plus 4 is 3x squared. Bring down my plus 5x. And then 8 minus 7 is a positive 1. One thing that I'll notice is that people will not make spaces or leave a blank. You need to make sure you do that. When we get into dividing, if you do not go in decreasing order of exponents, it's going to create problems for you. Okay, so let's look at subtracting. One thing that I do for subtracting is I don't like subtracting because students will subtract one and forget to subtract the other. So what I do is I'm going to distribute the negative before I do anything. So that means everything in this parentheses gets the negative. Okay? So I'm going to rewrite this, 3x squared, positive 4x, positive 8. And now I'm distributing this negative to everything in here. And distributing a negative really just changes the signs. So a positive 4 goes to a negative 4. A negative 5x becomes a positive 5x. And a negative 1 becomes a positive 1. Now, I switch this sign, so this becomes plus. I'm adding these. And so now we do a problem just like it's an addition. 3 plus negative 4 is negative 1. 4 plus 5 is 9. And 8 plus 1 is 9. And again, I distribute the negative and then I add. I see too many mistakes with students forgetting what to do with a minus or doing it sometimes and not other times. So the best thing to do is just think of this as a negative 1 and distribute that negative 1. So I'd like you to try the second one. Remember to distribute the negative and line up your problems vertically. And when you think you're ready, press play. All right, so I have an x to the third, and then I don't have an x squared, so I'm going to leave myself some space and write a negative 3x plus 5. My 2x squared is going to become a negative 2x squared, a negative 4x, and a positive 6. And again, I'm writing my plus sign, so I remember I plus. 1x squared plus nothing is just 1x cubed. I'm sorry, that's an x cubed. 0x squared and a negative 2x squared is a negative 2x squared. A negative 3 and a negative 4 is a negative 7. And 5 plus 6 is 11. Okay. So when you're doing adding and subtracting, I recommend doing the vertical method, and I also recommend that when it's subtracting that you go ahead and distribute the negative first. Okay, so now let's look at multiplying. Multiplying is when you're going to add your exponents. Okay? And so my suggestion with a problem like this is to kind of cover it up, right? So you don't see as much. And so now negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. I have 1x here and 2 here, so that gives me 3 x's. And then I have 3 y's and no y's, so I have 3 y's. What my suggestion is, after you do one, maybe cross it off so you don't see it again. Okay? Then I'm going to move my sticky tab over a little bit more. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. I have 1x here and 1x here, so I have 2 x's. And then I have 3 y's here and no y's here, so I have 3 y's. And I'm done with that one, so I cross it off. So now I go to my last one. Negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. I have 1x here and no x's here, so that means I have 1. And I have 3 y's and no y's, so that means I have 3 y's. And that's our answer. We won't be able to combine anything because I couldn't combine anything earlier. So if you can't combine before, you're not going to be able to combine after. Okay, so let's look at this one here. This problem, it's similar to this one where you go into chunks, but I'm going to do this first. Okay, so what you could do is you could FOIL, or you could distribute, or you could do something called the box method. And so I'm going to show the box method on this because I think it's a good method to use, especially when you start using bigger numbers and more terms. So I have a 2 term by a 2 term. So that means I need a 2 by 2 box. So x minus 5, that's an x and a negative 5. And x plus 3, that's an x and a positive 3. So now all I'm going to do is figure out this box. This box is made up by x and x, so it's x squared. This box is negative 5 and x, so it's negative 5x. This one is x and 3, so 3x. And this last one is negative 5 and 3, which is negative 15. One nice thing about the box method is that majority of the time the diagonals are like terms. So what I have now is x squared. A negative 5 and a positive 3 is a positive, or a negative 2, sorry. And a minus 15. Well, what I did is I just took care of this. Now I got to bring down this. And this is a good example of where I think the box is very helpful when I have more. So I'm going to set up my x and my plus 1. And now this time there's 3 terms, but you can't see that. So I'm going to have to split this box into 3's. The first one's x squared, then a negative 2x, then a negative 15. And so now we're going to fill in our box the same way. This first one is made up of x and x squared, so that's x cubed. If I go down, it's 1 and x squared, so it's 1x squared. This top middle one is an x and a negative 2x, so that's a negative 2x squared. And then 1 times negative 2x is a negative 2x. And then my top right, negative 15 and x is a negative 15x. And negative 15 and 1 is a negative 15. Now, even though it's not a square, this box still works because my like terms go together. So I have an x cubed. I have a negative 2x squared and a positive 1x squared, which is a negative 1x squared. I have a negative 15x and a negative 2x, which is a negative 17x. And then I have my negative 15. And there's my answer. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to look at number 1, and I'd like you to try and set up the box. Remember, this has 2, so it's going to be an x and a 2. And this next one has 3, so it's 2x squared, 3x, negative 4. So go ahead and try and fill that in, and then press play when you're ready to check your work. So you should have a 2x cubed, a 3x squared, and a negative 4x, a 4x squared, a 6x, and a negative 8. If I combine my terms, I get 2x cubed, 3 plus 4 is 7, x squared, negative 4 plus 6 is positive 2, minus 8. So look carefully, and if you made a mistake, most common thing that people are going to make a mistake with are the exponents. All right, now number 2, try and set up this one. This would be as hard as we're going to get in this class, and it's really not that bad. It's just a process. And this is a 3 by 3. So if I set it up, it doesn't matter which the one's on the top and which one's on the side. It'll still work out in the end. And so x squared, 5x, negative 1, 2x squared, negative 2x, plus 3. Okay, so go ahead and hit pause and try it out. And when you think you have your box ready, click play so that you could check with what we have here. You should have got 2x to the 4th minus 2x to the 3rd plus 3x squared. Now look at this pattern. As you go left to right, because my exponents are descending, my exponents in here are descending. So now it's going to be 10x to the 3rd, negative 10x squared, and then 15x. And then negative 2x squared, actually a negative 1 and a negative 2 becomes a positive 2x, and then a negative 3. So check your boxes, make sure your exponents look good. Okay, so now it's 2x to the 4th. And if you want to, you can cross it off when you're done. And then I have these two to go together. A 10 and a negative 2, well, that gives me 8x to the 3rd. Again, you can cross off if you like. And then I have my last big diagonal. Negative 2 and negative 10 is a negative 12. Plus 3 is a negative 9. And then 2 and 15 is 17. And then finally, minus 3. Okay, last one. This one, when it says to the 3rd power, that's just telling you to write this thing 3 times. So now if I do my 3x minus 1, and 3x minus 1, I would hope by now that we've done enough squares that you would recognize that this is 3 squared, which is 9x squared. 3x times 1 is negative 3, but you'll have 2 of them, so it's negative 6x plus 1. And if you don't recognize that, then if you do this, this is what you get. But we've done enough completing the square and perfect squares that I'm hoping you recognize this. And so now I need to split this up with my 2, which is 3x minus 1. Okay? So why don't you go ahead and try and finish that one, and then you can check to see how you did. So hopefully you got 27x cubed minus 18x squared plus 3x minus 9x squared plus 6x minus 1. So then that's 27x cubed minus 27x squared plus 9x minus 1. So the big thing I want you guys to be careful of is when you do the box method, you only do the box method with multiplying. So with multiplying, this is the box. When you have adding or subtracting, it's not the box method. You line them up vertically. And remember, for subtracting, you must distribute first.